Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Detox Live. We have a very exciting and important presentation for you today. So get ready to learn so you can make some changes that will have a meaningful impact on your life. Say hi in the chat and let us know where you're from. For those of you that are new, my name is Dorothy and have the amazing privilege of being your host. I bring you the most incredible doctors and practitioners that are changing the world so you can change your world. Allyssa LaScala is an integrative health practitioner who loves to help people find the underlying root causes as to why they're sick, tired, and weight loss resistant. She's always had an appreciation for and passion for health. So she got her degree in exercise and sports science and personal training certification. But she says her real education began when she started going through her own health challenges. It was then that she learned how broken the conventional medical approach was. It is now her mission to help people get their energy and life back without fads, gimmicks, but only through science-backed methods and mindset techniques. Today, she helps people all over the world restore the vitality they deserve. Welcome to the show, Allyssa.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it, Dorothy.
Awesome. Before we get started, I just want to let you know where you can find her on Instagram. Her handle is biohackingbombshell, and her website is fitwithliss, and that's Lyss. We are going to be talking about toxic beauty today, so that's self-care products and other things that we use that could be sabotaging our health. Put your questions related to that topic in the Ask the Speaker chat, and we will get to those later on. She's got an amazing and very long presentation for you guys, so I will just let her take it away.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I will tell you guys, I prefer to say power packed. There are a lot of different pillars of this toxic beauty world. And so just know I do this presentation very oftentimes for other practitioners. So it becomes very dense very easily because there's so much of a rabbit hole to go down when it comes to different types of personal care products, different types of procedures, etc. I'm just going to make sure when I'm advancing forward that I have the power to do that. If one of you guys could help me to be able to actually see where there we go. Now I'm hovering over top of it and I see the arrows. Awesome. We are good to go. All right, guys. Well, as Dorothy said, I had my own chronic health challenges. Just to give you a little glimpse, I dealt with gut issues since I was 5. I took my first stool test. I had chronic fatigue, brain fog, relentless like SIBO, candida, Lyme disease that developed, extreme mold toxicity. I had environmental toxins that were off the chart. And overall, my immune system function was very much bottomed out. So until I ended up getting into the world of functional medicine, and Cellcore was such a huge part of that, I was stuck in that conventional medical system. And one of the areas that I believe is still very untapped, people are very uneducated on, is these different pillars of toxic beauty. And I just want to preface this, that there is not in my brain and in my practice and in the clients that we see virtually, there is not this 100% clean and 0% fun or 0% enjoyment. I really am about that 80-20 life. Now, in different parts of my healing journey, I had different levels of dedication. So what we're going to walk through today, there may be some things now that I'm a little bit more lenient on, like I've been getting my nails done probably for the last year because it's something that I got back into and I know how to support myself. When I was in my sickest of sick, it wasn't worth it to me. I was like, I will cut out anything. I will, if I know it is not helping me heal, it is gone, like as much as possible. And so just know that it's also okay to make different decisions depending on where you are in your healing journey. Nothing is right or wrong. My goal is complete informed consent here so that you fully understand, okay, this is what is possible. Here's what I'm being exposed to. Here are the potential outcomes. Here's who has higher risk. Here is how I can mitigate some exposure or best support myself. And I'm excited to do the Q&A towards the end because if there's anything you want a little bit more detailed information about or clarity on, I'm here for that. But just come into this with a very open mind. You're going to hear some things that you've never heard before that could be very much opposite of what you hear in the aesthetic space and that are a little taboo. And that's also okay. But when it comes down to how to apply this information, it could look different for you in different seasons. So whatever that looks like for you right now, that is okay. Take what you can and leave what doesn't apply to you right now. So when we look at the different pillars, personal care products, as well as home care products, nails, hair treatment, hair dye, lash extensions, breast implants, different types of botulinum toxin A injections and filler. Those are the major categories today that we are going to be diving into. Now, when you're looking at the goal, for me, I want to highlight for you, what are the primary toxicants in these products and practices that we discussed today? What are the common symptoms of exposure so you know what to look out for? If there's testing options available, if you guys are trying to get more certainty and dial in, what are those? What do they look like? And then what are some of the foundational supports, targeted detox tools, different solutions, mostly dialing in on cell core focus, because that's why you are here. How can you leverage these tools that you already know and love to be able to better support you in these areas? So when we're looking at the spectrum of application, I know Dorothy told me earlier, it's often 50-50 of the type of people that we have on these calls. We have some practitioners here where I pray that you start to be able to take this information and ask more qualified questions on your patient intake forms to save you time, to give more effective care to your patients, to your clients. But for anyone on here, we are all exposed to these things. We're all tempted by these things or already use some of these things. So I want you to have better overall awareness, whether you're a patient or a client or you're a practitioner. And for that person that is just like I was, and you're like, I am nitty gritty, like hyper aware and clean in a lot of these areas. You are the person who has filtered your water, filtered your air. You don't have anything other than organic food most of the time. You probably don't drink. You can go down these rabbit holes. You swap every personal care product and you maybe still have symptoms, or you maybe still are like, are there any other areas I need to clean up? This is where we can start to get more specific so that you see what are some of these other exposures that often go under the radar for decades and get missed. So we're going to talk about some more effective detox solutions. And again, how do you live that 80-20 life to be able to create more capacity to do some of these things that you may very much enjoy, or maybe you decide something's not worth the risk. So when we're looking at personal care, this is probably the area most people are the most familiar with. When we're looking at makeup, shampoo, conditioner, hairspray, shaving creams, most of you guys probably know at this point, if you're here, Dorothy and I were just saying earlier, you guys are like the ride or die people that are like, I just want to glean more information. I love knowledge. I love continuing to improve my lifestyle. So I'm sure you are not unaware of the fact that PFAS, forever chemicals, parabens, sulfates, phthalates, all invade some of these popular brands and even some brands that appear to be clean, but they're very greenwashed. So when you're looking at the endocrine disruption, the immune system suppression, the carcinogenic or cancer causing properties of this, these are things a lot of times we're using every day. So while it seems like it's not that big of a deal, this is the place that I want to start with clients. And on patient intake forms, I ask about some of the key areas. I do want to know, what are you using for laundry detergent, for dish soap, for toothpaste, for deodorant? And I'll ask just to get an idea, where are they on this spectrum so that I can understand how much work do we probably have to do. But some of my favorite tools, and make sure as we go through, guys, if something really resonates with you, screenshot that. I'd love if you ended up sharing it on maybe a story on social, tag Biohacking Bombshell on there. Let me know what was your favorite, what was the most valuable and insightful thing for you. But there's going to be a lot of information here, so feel free to screenshot as we go. This is, if you walk away with nothing else, probably one of the most helpful and valuable things. These are some of the valuable resources that we leverage with clients in order to be able to make sure that they can at scale audit and tweak their products. So to be able to go and make sure that you don't have to, as a practitioner, audit every single product. And then in order to be able to give the client or any type of individual empowerment to be able to see, okay, where does this rank on a toxicity scale? These apps are not perfect by any means, but ultimately you want to be able to have these in your pocket to be able to audit things as you go. Put in the chat, guys, like how many of you currently already audit some of your products? I'd be really interested to know. Joanne, as you're hopping in here, Mary, Susie, awesome. I'm glad that you guys are tuning in today. Make sure that you go and put in the chat there if you have a favorite resource that you use to audit. I'd love if you could share that with the audience here as well. Okay, so first category here. And guys, as we dial into some of these ingredients in personal care products, this is going to apply. when I talk about nails, when I talk about hair. So we get a little bit more specific here in the beginning and heavier in the beginning because it's applicable all throughout. So when we're looking at PFAS chemicals over the last couple of years, very much more awareness has come around probably in the last like 2 to 3 years. We know they're in the water. We know they're in the air. We know they are in personal care products here. So when we're looking at lipstick, foundation, shampoo, any type of products that are sweat proof, waterproof, your period products, ladies, your tampons, your pads, your liners, period underwear, anything like that that's not supposed to leak or sweat off, major red flag for me immediately that I'm looking at. And then when you're looking at things like period products, activewear, guys, I know they're not necessarily like personal care products, maybe depending on how you look at it as far as beauty goes, but these are big areas of exposure for our clients and they're so often missed. So when you're looking at the effects of these, if you have reproductive issues, hormone imbalances, you have exacerbated PMS, you have symptoms of estrogen dominance, or just like changes in your symptoms throughout different stages of your cycle, you want to pay attention here. When you're looking at the endocrine disruption that happens, it's wild. And as you can see bolded here, that one study showed that women with higher PFAS levels in their body were found to be 40% less likely to become pregnant over a year. Like, to cut your likelihood of conception in half is insane. And so when you're looking at those effects, you're looking at the immune system suppression, multiple different cancers with a 40 to 60% increased risk of cancers. Is this worth the risk for you? Only you can decide. But these guys are really stubborn. So you want to be careful. They are very persistent. You have short chain and long chain PFAS, and the long chain ones could last in your body up to 15 years. So when you're looking at like risk versus reward, this is definitely an area I'd pay attention to. I do test this within my clients. Vibrant America has a PFAS panel. There are several other companies that will have them. More and more will be coming out. But the big way that I want to make sure that someone is mitigating exposure or having any type of mitigation solutions because of how persistent they are is to actually mitigate. They bioaccumulate in a lot of different tissues. And if you want a good, like, enjoyable experience to really understand how severe these are, go and watch the movie Dark Waters. Put in the chat if you've watched it. Just say watched it in the chat. I watched it a couple of years ago and I already knew PFAS were really risky. It is a great movie, I'll go above and beyond, but go watch that and it really helps you to understand the severity of this. And if you're a practitioner, have your patients watch it too. Other lifestyle factors, again, guys, I know this is not beauty related, but filtering that drinking water, huge way that you can mitigate exposure. Avoiding nonstick cookware or those stain resistant furniture treatments. Or as we go into winter, spraying your Uggs or different shoes with the stain resistant treatments. Check and see if those are PFAS free. Super easy way to mitigate, super important. So when we're looking at different types of detox solutions that would be more internal outside of mitigation, the bile and the stool are some of the most important. So when you're looking at advanced TUDCA for good bile support, you're looking at bowel mover, even like the TriMag complex to be able to keep the bowels moving. This is the primary way the body is going to exit it out of the body. Binders and herbs, as far as like what muscle test really well in our practice, drainage activator is one of the best overall products to help to escort this out of the system. Or if you're looking at dietary changes, psyllium, any type of oat-based like beta-glucan, it's not drastic reduction in overall PFAS, but they have found in studies that just incorporating that on a daily basis helps to remove these things from the system. So that's something dietarily you can go and add in. So that covers PFAS. The next big P is parabens. And when you're looking at a lot of the same sources, they very much start to overlap here. Very, very common. When we're looking at the primary effects, they are lipophilic. They love your fat tissue. They love to get in the breast tissue. They love to get in tumors and breast milk, but are also found in like urine and blood. They have estrogen mimicking effects. So again, if you're dealing with hormone related symptoms, infertility, reproductive issues, this is a big one as well. They absolutely are tied to increased cancers, especially breast cancer. The one UK study that I came across, 19 out of 20 breast tumor tissue samples have parabens in them. That's insane. And Another study found that if you are a leaner woman and had like a lower BMI or body mass index, you were having a likely increased exposure or increased accumulation. Your risk for breast cancer was higher as a lean person. And I'm thinking it's because they're getting way more condensed in one specific area. You have way less fat on your body. And so if you have littler breast tissue, it's going to be more concentrated and dense and be more likely to cause issues in that area. That's my projection, but it's wild to see. And then of course it affects the immune system. There's skin reactions, there's allergic reactions. Overall, higher mortality risk here too. When you're looking at the different stats that are down here more towards the bottom, depending on the specific type of paraben metabolite, anywhere from 31 to 171% increase risk in all-cause mortality, that's insane. So when you're looking between just PFAS and parabens alone, trying to make sure that your products don't have that in it is huge. You can test well for parabens within different types of environmental toxin and total toxin panels that are out there. And then when you're mitigating, in my opinion, it's a bit easier than something like PFAS because you look on the label and paraben is going to end up being in the derivative. If they're properly listing it on the label, you will see that. They get excreted through bile, urine, like liver, kidneys, bowel. Any of those supports are going to be the most helpful. So more so cell core related, I'm looking at KL support. I'm looking at advanced TUDCA. I'm looking at the B complex or even core nutrients that has some of the Bs in there. And then biotoxin binder tests well for removing parabens from the system also. When you're looking at sulfates, another really common one, I will tell you that with like anything that's kind of like foamy, bubbly, a lot of times shampoos, body washes, your laundry detergents are another big one as well. Very commonly have sulfates. When you're looking at the different effects, it's a lot of different areas. My kiddos that I work with or any person that comes to me with skin conditions, immediately I'm like, what are you washing your clothes in? Because if they're still using, even if it's like free and clear Tide or Gain or whatever, a lot of them, they still have this SLS in there or different types of sulfates. So that's one of the easiest ways that you can mitigate, but you could have exposure orally because it's in a lot of toothpaste that are out there to get them to foam up. So mouth related issues could be tied here as well. You can have different eye issues, a little bit more specific in that area, a little bit more obvious with eye burning, dry eye, inflammation. You can have respiratory issues. You can have different types of neurological components. People get headaches, brain fog, fatigue. Think of pillows that you may be sleeping on that end up being washed in that laundry detergent. That could trigger it as well. Makeup that you're putting on your face with certain things on it or different types of foaming agents for cleansers. So pay attention there. Now, when you're testing, and I want to be specific with the type of organic acids test if I'm being transparent, because there's a lot of them out there and I don't see a lot of them be that accurate yet. So Mosaic is the top one that I use in my practice. If you're going to spend money on something, I want you to do something that's right. And so when you're looking, if you're looking for these particular metabolites here, you have to use this brand as of right now. There's also a 24-hour urine collection testing. We do hair tissue mineral analysis as well to look for some of these components. So a lot of different root cause clues that you can look for in these labs. And then when you're looking for mitigation, like I said, sulfate's right in the name. So it's pretty easy to spot. You want to really support the kidneys here as that's going out primarily through renal clearance. And then when it comes to the overall detox metabolic support, your B vitamins. So again, core nutrients, B complex, magnesium is big here with mag complex, and you got to get that bile moving. So TUDCA is a winner here. Now, if you're looking at respiratory related issues, this is where I would use a mobile nebulizer. I use this with a lot of my different clients. And so if you're doing food grade hydrogen peroxide, you could nebulize glutathione. There's not something specific from Cellcore that I'd say I'd put in there, but this is such an impactful area with respiratory that I couldn't skip over this. So make sure that you're doing targeted support for whatever tissues are being most impacted. All right, phthalates are the third P. And so when you're looking at, again, a lot of these other overlapping personal care and beauty products, they're very similar. I also added on clothing and fashion. And so this is an area that I absolutely am still playing around with and doing more research on, because when you're looking at the plastics that are in your leggings, whether it's Amazon or Lulu, it's in there. And so you want to pay attention to anything else that you may be coming in contact with on a regular basis there. So hormone disruption, again, you guys see a huge pattern here. A lot of this stuff is hormone. So women will go and spend thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands with some of the clients that I've worked with on something like IVF and all of these other types of treatments and frustrations, and they still are not getting to the root here. So this is a really big area. When you're looking at the one study from 2019, they found a 52% reduction in implantation rate success with higher levels of phthalates within the person's system. 38% reduction in actually getting pregnant, and then 36% reduction in live birth rates. That just wrecks my heart. And so if you've ever been through IVF, or if you have a client that's going through that, or a friend or family member, a lot of times on the door, when you're walking into a clinic like this, it'll say you cannot wear like scented perfumes, you cannot wear any type of like scented lotions. And it's because they know the risk that this causes, but we're not having this conversation before someone's going in and getting IVF. Maybe if we would have, they wouldn't need to go and get those treatments in the long run, right? Because we're doing the mitigation earlier on. So pay attention here for anything hormone related, and it is men too. So yes, while this affects birth rates, preterm birth, there was a study that was done with 6 to 12-year-old boys, and they saw about 30% reduction in serum testosterone for them. So boys got to pay attention to. Neurological issues, my goodness, children were found to be 2.5 times higher risk of, if you can't see that because my video's over it, ADHD because of exposure in the prenatal setting. So when we're looking at different types of behavioral disorders, are we paying attention to personal care products and reducing that even after birth, of course. And then when it comes to immune and metabolic dysfunction, there's a lot of different issues there as well. So when you're looking at respiratory cancer risk, that is present here too. Again, breast cancer is another big one that is being influenced by phthalates. You can test for these. There's the urinary testing that's done by multiple different companies on total toxin panels. And then when it comes down to mitigation, these things can be on the label, guys, but they can hide as well. So if you have something you probably have heard before, like you never know what hides in fragrance, perfume, aroma, scent blend, message the company, ask them, confirm, can you please tell me what is within this particular product and hiding under that label? We definitely want to give some of those supports for the urine and the bile and the bowel motility here, just like a lot of other different toxicants, core nutrients for that typical phase 1, phase 2 liver detox, KL support, TUDCA, bowel mover, and sweat. If you are blessed enough to be able to move your body enough to go and do it through exercise, that was found to be insanely effective. If not, I have a lot of my clients tolerate what they can in a sauna if they have one accessible to be able to mimic that type of cardiovascular response. And they found that more of these particular metabolites came out through sweat than they did other pathways. So if you have access to be able to move your body or to be able to do something through sauna, incredible way to detox phthalates, and take a binder beforehand to help to mop up anything that's being mobilized if you can. All right, now let's get into hair. So you have like different hair dyes, hair relaxers, treatments, straightening treatments. How many of you guys, and I will admit it as well, still get like your hair highlighted or still get your hair colored? Put it in the chat. Hair, if you do any of these things, even if it's just like once or twice a year, doing it less a year is still a way to be able to mitigate. But a lot of us still want to and don't want to let go of, like we don't want to show the grays, or we really like the dimension that comes in our hair. So let's talk about some of the risks and then solutions that come along here. So when you're looking at dyes specifically, the aromatic amines are a very toxic and common toxicant that we have here. They love to bind to protein and DNA. They are carcinogenic, so much so that over a decade ago, Europe started restricting this. How many of you guys know that a lot of other countries don't allow a lot of the stuff that we do here? But they didn't remove it 100%. They got better than we did, but they didn't totally remove it. The US doesn't have those same regulations. And so the FDA of the United States also does not require each ingredient that's used in these dyes to even undergo pre-market approval. So you're kind of like your own little test bunny here, unfortunately. And in 2019, they found that there definitely was a like ethnic component, like whatever your nationality was there, you definitely could have some genetic predispositions. Black women were found that if they got their hair dyed every 5 to 8 weeks, to have a 60% increased risk of breast cancer. White women, 8%. That's wild. And I don't like to blame a lot of things on genetics because I think it's a cop out for a lot of things anymore. However, sometimes the facts are just the facts. We are, God built us all in the way that he did. And, we have different genetic predispositions. And this is something that if I'm speaking with a Black client versus a white client, I'm going to bring it to their attention and just say, listen, this is an area that maybe you don't want maybe this needs to be a non-negotiable, or can we really reduce the amount of times per year you're getting this done because you are at way higher risk than maybe a white client or an Asian client. All right. Different types of cancers like lymphoma, ovarian cancers, bladder cancer, especially in barbers, hairdressers, hairstylists, one of the most toxic professions. So I'm always on top of my stylists that I work with. They have a 20 to 50% increased risk of bladder cancer, but overall their exposures to these things are much higher. And of course, there's a lot of other different symptoms that can go along with it as well, with allergic reactions and different types of effects that we end up seeing there. So when you're looking at testing, there is no way to be able to perfectly test for these, but if you get your hair dyed, and hopefully your client is telling you that too if you're a practitioner. You can look for the aftermath downstream. Like I could run an organic acids test or run some blood work and see, does it look like glutathione markers are being affected or something like that? Or maybe you end up deciding you want to do a genetic test and your NAT1, NAT2 genetic SNPs. Like if they are having issues, you're going to not be able to metabolize these things as well. So you could go down that rabbit hole if you really wanted to. But as far as if you're someone that actively gets this done, you got to be on something like core nutrients, doing a good B complex, supporting that natural detoxification. Take your KL support, take your TUDCA before, after, a good amount surrounding that session. And Virad Chem is a great binder for the toxicants that we're dealing with here. Now, when it comes to perms, relaxers, I got my hair chemically straightened when I was back in middle school, different types of treatments. There's other toxicants here. Formaldehyde is a really big one. So you can have respiratory here. You can have the neurological side. There's definitely different sensory components, immune, exacerbated autoimmune conditions, very obvious skin issues and irritation. Again, cancer comes up here. This is a group 1 carcinogen. So looking at leukemia and other cancers, this is a big deal. You got to make sure you're supporting and mitigating when you're getting any of these things done. And even things that don't seem like they are very threatening, like a keratin treatment. You can see the last little bullet point here. The FDA has literally said stylists that do keratin hair treatments are exposed to over 5 times the safe levels of formaldehyde. And you think keratin, like, oh, it helps to like rebuild the hair and it's supportive and it's like protein dense. There's toxicants with that too. So you gotta be careful. So when you're looking at testing, you could definitely look for the metabolite of this on something like a good quality organic acid test. It's very glutathione dependent when it comes to metabolizing it from the body. So Glyinactive tastes great. Also a great way to make endogenous glutathione. If you have someone that is Asian, whether this is you, someone you know, a client that you're working with, they are well known to have an ALADH2 SNP. And this is part of the pathway that metabolizes this. So if I know I have an Asian client and I'm like, you get perms, you get your hair chemically straightened, or you're doing any of these treatments, you're at way higher risk for issues here. You need more support. So when we're looking at core nutrients, B complex, magnesium, again, all really great ways to support that methylation. And again, if there's anything that's respiratory, do the nebulizing routines that we talked about earlier. Okay, nails, brief stop here, nails, lashes. Then we're going to be getting into Botox and filler, which are my personal favorites and the most taboo. So hang on, guys. So for nails, as I said earlier, I currently get my nails done right now. I've done this in so many different ways. I've done press-ons, I've done acrylics, I painted my own nails with the non-toxic ones that I have a couple other ones on my list that I'm going to try, but there's a lot of them that like don't work. So women get frustrated and they default back to this. But no matter what you are looking at here, ultimately it comes down to some of the 3 major toxicants that we're dealing with. Some we already talked about. You got formaldehyde, you got phthalates, and then you have this wonderful toluene here. They cause all different types of liver, kidney issues, respiratory issues, etc. But the acrylates are the biggest things that I'm concerned about. And it's one of the hardest things to replace to actually make nail products work for women. So that's why they typically gravitate towards things that have them in there. It was named Contact Allergen of the Year. And I do see this be an issue for a lot of clients. The interesting thing is that it doesn't just have to be just on your fingernails or your toenails where you're getting this done. I have had numerous clients come to me and are like, oh, all of a sudden I developed this like rash around my eye. And it's like, I don't have an infection of the eye. It's not pink eye, but like, what is this almost like dermatitis looking thing on my eye? And I'm like, I think it's tied to your nails. And they don't believe me. And then they stop getting them done at the salon. And they're like, I hate to say this, but it's resolved. So this can address areas that are completely not related to where you're getting your nails painted. And it shows up on another area of the body. So keep that in mind. It's way more common than you think. Now, when it comes to testing, acrylates are the one that we didn't talk about yet. There's no perfect way to test for it. You could use some of these other toxin panels to see, do you see VOCs in there? Because they can be correlated, but honestly, I don't personally think that it's worth it if you're trying to dial in. You can ask someone enough questions and know, are they using acrylates? So you can do some of these like 5 free, 10 free shampoos, different types of polishes. When you're looking at the brand that I would use right now that I played around with more so for my toes, Manicurist is a decent one that's not totally free of anything, but it does work. So that's one of the brands there. But if you're looking at like internal supports versus swapping what you're using, your core nutrients, B complex, KL, hopefully you guys see a pattern there. Like you need the nutrients on a daily basis. The support phase 1 and phase 2 liver detox. So like for me, that's a non-negotiable. Like people will poo-poo all over multivitamins. And I'm like, why would you not cover all the things that you know you need in a day? I guarantee you're not getting everything from the nutrition because of how depleted soils are. So just cover your bases for like the bare minimum and then use targeted supports like KL support. Drainage activator in this case is really great. And then Virad Chem Binder is great for a lot of these metabolites. Take it before you go to the salon. Take it when you get home from the salon. At minimum, that is absolutely what I would be doing. False lashes, quick stop here. We already talked about any of the different toxicants that you're getting exposed to there, but whether they are press-ons, lash extensions, etc., you end up having a lot of the same reactions that you did when we talked about the different acrylates, formaldehyde, etc. So you can refer back to any of my recommendations there if you're someone that goes and does your lashes. Breast implants. I forgot about this one before we end up getting to Botox and filler. So breast implants, especially if you guys have been in this community for a little while, this is not necessarily new to the Cellcore space. They definitely helped to be able to bring this to the attention of the population more so at scale. You guys know that there's definitely risk that comes along to saline or silicone filled implants. But I'm going to highlight some things that you may not know or may have not considered as part of this process. The silicone is the biggest area of concern, of course, in my opinion. It is in the shell of both, and it's inside the gel-filled, silicone-filled implants. It is very persistent. It hides everywhere. It can spread. There is immune activation that happens because it's like a foreign body. You have the gel bleed that comes from the implant itself. So it could come from the shell, but especially the women, which is majority of women that have silicone filled implants. This is what starts to be more of a concern. And there's study after study showing that you don't have to have a rupture, and it's this slow bleed over time. And so this is what, if women are not constantly supporting drainage and getting things moving and binding and removing, this is what I personally believe causes most of BII or breast implant illness related symptoms for most women. Saline implants can absolutely still contain some of the same ingredients, but I get this question very frequently. If someone was going to get implants, is there a better option? Like, is one healthier than another? And flat out, I've had clients this year that have asked me that. I have said, if you're going to get them, for me, it would be a non-negotiable to get saline filled, because at least you're drastically reducing the load of silicone. You don't have 2 full bags of silicone. You got shells, but you don't have a higher load. So if I were having someone that's like, I'm going to get them no matter what, which one do I do? Or you have someone that's trying to recover from a double mastectomy and they're choosing what they're getting, that would be for me a non-negotiable of what I would recommend. So when you're looking at testing, you can't test for silicone as far as I know right now, not at least in a regular setting versus industrial setting. Virad Chem Binder I'd be using, Bile Support, TUDCA, and then do the coffee enemas, do the castor oil packs, do the rebounding for lymphatic movement, do Flow Vibe. I love like my one, now you can see it, vibrational device. It looks like a vibrator. Let's be really obvious, but this is specifically for your lymph. In certain areas, you can go and use it. I literally have it on my desk here all the time to do throughout the day. These are things that would be a non-negotiable for any clients that I knew that had implants, but especially for someone that is recovering from explanting or wanting to make sure they support themselves while it's in there and reduce the likelihood of having to take them out, you've got to use these tools and be very intentional about it. You can also have coinciding infections. Biofilms love to build up around these areas. And so when you're looking at things like the Biocidin line, Biocidin LSF is my personal favorite there. CT-Zyme on an empty stomach has a lot of great biofilm disrupting properties there. So could even something like IFC with like the berberine and stuff in it. There's different ones, but those would be my top two. In addition to then using whatever different antimicrobials you may need, the para products, the IS tinctures to address any active infection that is actually happening within there. When you are looking at textured implants, polyurethane is a major concern here. Guys, I want to make sure I have time to go through everything. So I'm not going to read everything on these, but make sure that you screenshot anything that's really important to you. This specific ingredient that was in a lot of these textured implants, very much higher increase rates of that breast implant specific lymphoma that has started to come out more in the last couple of years. Can't really test very well for it, but doing the KL support TUDCA IFC is what I would recommend there. There's definitely PFAS within breast implants, but again, we already talked about that component. Heavy metals are part of the shell. That's just going to be part of it. They all have their own impacts that they can have on the body. And so if I'm running tests for clients, I could definitely run it through urine. And then I also can look at a hair tissue mineral analysis to be able to see where we are. Doing Virad Chem for at least a month and then moving into HMET for several months afterwards is often what we are doing to be able to help escort these out. And then sauna is fantastic here as well. Talk to your practitioner about whether they feel it's worth it for you to do sauna with your implants in. If you have a rupture, I don't think it's worth it. Outside of that, I think it can depend on the client, but I think there's a time and a place. Scar tissue development is another area of here. And guys, even if you don't have implants and you had other surgeries, scar tissue is definitely something that you want to pay attention to. Doing proteolytic enzymes, such as the enzymes that are in CT-Zyme and taken at least 20 minutes before food or at least 2 hours after, can help to break that down. It's wild. Also doing neural therapy injections can be really helpful there as well. If you're looking to be able to test for mycotoxin colonization or mold within the body, which unfortunately is super common with people that are dealing with immune system suppression issues from implants too, you can go and do a urine panel. I love biotoxin binder or the even more powerful carboxy there. Para4 is one of my favorites. And then doing the different drainage activator KL and TUDCA for drainage support. Okay, so as far as BII, if you guys have not been familiarized with this, you can clearly see from the image that's on the right that basically almost any single symptom that you can think of has kind of been put under this umbrella of like, could this be correlated with breast implant illness? Which I think is why so many women are gaslit in this area, because there's no specific way to test for that. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But the studies do show, as more and more awareness comes about, you definitely are at increased risk for having different types of autoimmune and rheumatic disorders, different types of whether it's like MS, Sjogren's, RA, lupus. What I found in these studies is that many of them are silicone-filled implants. So I would like to be able to see studies really showing how much higher the risk is with the silicone-filled versus saline. I do think that there would be a notable difference, but most of the studies, because majority of women have the silicone, are based specifically around that. When you are looking at testing, like I said, there's not one single test to say, yep, they got BII. You really have to go off of case history, symptomatology, and then if you're looking for certain things, you can use imaging. So you could do an MRI if you're trying to see if you do have a silicone implant, did it rupture? So that's kind of the gold standard there. Thermography, if that's what I have clearly pictured on the side of the screen here, when you start to see those red areas, that's congestion. So more congestion, stagnancy breeds sickness. If you end up having that slower drainage, you're more likely to develop an issue in that area. So thermography can be a helpful tool for awareness of how problematic that area probably is for you. And then if women are trying to take them out, which is definitely something that people are taking more action on, you got the end block removal. You definitely have to do full spectrum detox afterwards, scar tissue work, doing nervous system work. Those are all things that we walk clients through if that is something that they decide to do. Now let's get into Botox. And I was telling Dorothy before we hopped on and Monica that I'm like, you know what, this is probably the most taboo topic, because you could ask any injector and you will very, very likely be gaslit that any of what I'm about to tell you is accurate. But when you're looking at any of these injections, it's not just the trademarked Botox, but the Dysport, Xeomin, Jabo, the Daxxify, all of them are these botulinum toxin A injections. And side effects are really underreported. Like I just saw a video of an injector yesterday saying, well, I just contacted them and there have been no side effects reported, XYZ. And I'm like, this is just, an underreporting bias, because when it's being told to an injector, the client, the patient is being told, no, that can't be related. So they don't go and report it because they're being told that it's not related. But you absolutely can have a lot of things that can occur from these injections either immediately or even like a decade down the road. So for those of you guys that really don't know how Botox works, it's essentially releasing this neurotoxin that impairs the receptors that allow your face or other areas of your body to move. So it's being used in functional medicine in the longevity space and being spun as healthy and proactive. And it is really anything but that. Now, I'm not at all judging anyone. Like I literally have best friends that still do this. I just want you to know what I know and you can make a decision that feels good for you. But let's talk about some of these myths, because this is what you will hear in this space. They'll say it's such a small dose. There's no danger. The reality is that most people don't realize that this unit that is used when you're like, oh yeah, I got 50 units here, like 10 units here, whatever. It's an LD50 unit. That stands for lethal dose 50 unit. LD50 unit is a mouse unit. And that means that 50% of mice that are injected with that amount of Botox will die. That's how they measure Botox. So it's not like, oh, it's just the volume that's in the syringe. It's literally how many mice would die from that. And I think it just really puts it into perspective. You can go and research this, but that's how they measure that. And so that alone should tell you that we probably have something that's high risk here. They'll say side effects only happen if you're doing these irresponsible Botox parties, or, you're using black market products or unexperienced injectors. That's false. You'll have women that go to the same prestigious high-level injector for a decade, and their 11th year that they were going, all of a sudden after that session, they started having issues. So how well you did beforehand doesn't predict how well you will tolerate it, quote unquote, later, or if it will spread. They'll say, oh, it only happens in therapeutic doses, like when we're treating cerebral palsy or other issues. That's also not true. You have people just addressing their crow's feet and having issues. They say the toxin stays local. Well, the black box warning label that literally comes with the product says that it does not stay local. So those injectors just are not reading their product insert. They say it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. They've proven that it does, and there are studies. Within 4 to 12 months, it's out of your system. This is one of the biggest loads of poop, because what happens is it stays in your system. When they say, oh, it wears off, and someone's like, oh, my face is moving again, I'm due for my Botox. What's happening is your synapses in your face or the other areas are regrowing. You're not detoxing it. It's not leaving. Those synapses are still dead and paralyzed. Your body just regrew new ones. Some people's don't end up regrowing, and then they have more issues and atrophy. But these are some of the biggest lies that you will hear. And so when you're looking at the ways that they first used it, and it was a little bit more for like emergency situations, now it's just more for aesthetics. So you guys, again, can screenshot, watch this later, watch the recording later, and be able to circle back to some of the details here. But the reality is that 2/3 of the Botox use is completely off label. Allergan has pled guilty and paid over $600 million in fines because it was approved for one thing and they're marketing it for another. And it's just very unsafe. Has black box warning label. No one sees it. And so the risk is there, and people don't really understand how serious that it is. There's a variety of different types of symptoms that are correlated with this. And the reality is that it's still just not something that any injector is going to end up acknowledging. But it crosses the blood-brain barrier. They literally have proven that it still affects those areas for at least 2 years post-injection. If you're someone that's dealt with EBV, Lyme, chronic types of infections, chronic UTIs, like anything like that, those are very often tied to the immune system suppression and dysregulation that can come from Botox in a lot of patients. When you're looking at eye issues, that's another common one. If you have nervous system issues, this is something I would absolutely screenshot and go back to later. One of the famous scientists that are out there, Dr. Anna, ended up discovering that there was a particular type of nervous system syndrome, where it looks like on paper, according to your lab tests, according to your imaging, if you had someone examine you and you're like, I know something has been off since I've gotten Botox, and they're like, nope, like nothing's here. There are specific syndromes that have ended up being developed where it doesn't present as what they would say is like normal Botox poisoning, but you can see that there are patterns of how people's nervous systems are being impacted there. And she did an entire study on that. So it affects the peripheral, the autonomic nervous system, a lot of different areas of the body can have a host of different types of symptoms. By the way, guys, I love how many questions you're putting in here. I cannot wait to get to them in a few minutes. You're asking really good questions. I am keeping an eye on it. So when you're looking at the biggest key takeaways that you want to have here, no matter how symptoms can manifest, chronic infection, other types of unexplained neurological issues, I need you to remember this isn't just about accumulation. This isn't just about like, oh, it's, I'll be able to get this for maybe at least 5 years. As long as I'm not doing it for the rest of my life, I won't accumulate to the point that I'll have toxicity. It's about the bioactivity that happens in the body, and the inability to be able to restore movement or function is very real for many people who have Botox damage. So if you're someone that does get this or know someone who does, they got to be aware of these different things that can trigger the delayed spread. So make sure you take a picture of this to be able to reference for later. This will increase your risk of having compound issues later. There's a variety of different types of testing. I typically go into this in great detail. If I'm talking more so to practitioners, I want to have time to be able to get through this and have chats. So I'm going to keep moving, but just essentially know that as you go through all of these, and you can pause this recording when you watch it later and literally take in all of the things as you go through each. There are different types of energetic testing. There's mouse assay testing. There's different types of EMGs that are on here. There is brain MRI imaging. You have different types of eye exams to be able to evaluate ocular function. But overall, when it comes down to any type of testing that I have, none of it is perfect. And none of it is completely like, oh, Botox caused this very well. So there's different types of solutions here, but I definitely would be working with a practitioner to be able to recover if you realize that you have Botox poisoning and is very complex. So there's a lot of different tools and resources that we can use for that. Some pharmacological, these different solutions, peptides, different injections, different supports. The best thing that I can tell you is absolutely having like magnesium, B complexes, great for overall support. But otherwise, this specific area needs to very much be bio-individualized. So make sure that you link arms with a practitioner that feels comfortable and can walk you through some of the options to be able to support. Okay. I'm going to keep going through this, guys. This is very, very dense when it comes to the Botox. We may end up having to do I may have to do like some type of bonus training at some point specifically on just this, because I know this is a area that a lot of people want to dive deeper into. But there's a lot of really great research specifically on these areas. Last but not least, fillers. And some people kind of look at fillers as like that, okay, well, if I'm not going to do Botox, I'm going to do filler instead. It seems like a healthier alternative. I will say like that is the lesser evil of the two, I do personally believe, but there are definitely risks to these as well. Lymphatic obstruction is the biggest thing. When you're looking at how it impacts overall drainage in your face or other areas. And you can definitely have an autoimmune response and a lot of other of the similar responses that we talked about earlier based off of a foreign body being injected into your system. You can have biofilms build up on these areas, just like we talked about with breast implants and like a foreign object. So again, a lot of times drainage impairment, autoimmune risk, those are some of the biggest things that we see. Brain fog, fatigue, people could have like POTS type symptoms, any type of autoimmune development. And then of course, just very obvious localized drainage areas that are being impacted. When we're looking at testing methods, no perfect way to be able to necessarily say, hey, filler caused this symptom, but we can see if it kind of migrated or if it's causing inflammation or further issues. And then when we're looking at solutions, you basically have to dissolve it or surgically remove something. You could do some lymphatic work to kind of push some stuff through or other coinciding infections that you could address with Cellcore products for sure. But I'm more trying to get clients to be like, are you open to strategic and intentional and proper face taping, microneedling, topical solutions, PRP, different types of lasers, different things that are out there. So I know I had to kind of speed through the end of it here, guys. This is typically very dense. So thank you for having grace with me as we go through what is a very heavy topic category here. But how do you want to, Dorothy, if you want to pop back on, or if Monica wants to pop back on, and either we can put certain questions here as a priority that are probably the most applicable, or I can scroll through the chat.
Yeah, so in the Ask Speaker chat, Monica put them all over there. More than anything, like there's one here specific that we can address. Someone's asking about the mesh sling for prolapse. Is it made of plastic? And she's
Good
kind of wondering
question.
how to
I would
deal with
have to
that.
look up the ingredients for that, but I will tell you that whether it's the mesh sling for that or whether someone's having issues with hernias, there are definitely compounding issues there no matter what, with heavy metals, autoimmune response with foreign objects. So I'd have to look up and specifically see, and I'm always about dialing into that brand. So I would never want to give a global, like, yeah, all of them have it in there specifically for mesh. Breast implants are a little bit different. It's like, there's not one that I'm like, oh, this is a PFAS free implant. But when it comes to meshes, they may have some slightly different ingredients like that. So I would dial in and potentially look at the insert for that product.
Okay, sounds good. So everyone, Allyssa, wants alternatives. Like people want to know alternatives for Botox because the wrinkles are getting worse in perimenopause. People want alternatives for hair care. What else do they want alternatives for? Lash glue. Just all the things. That's what they want, alternatives.
Yes, love it, love it. Well, just so you guys know, this is something I'm actively working on, which should be launched very soon. But especially as I started doing this talk more frequently, people are like, okay, give me like that go-to running list, easy guide, easy to refer to. So what I can most specifically say is that when you're looking at like lash glues, for example, any of the ones that are better, they just don't last as long. So you have to be okay with that. But like Lashify is like a cleaner one. But your lashes won't stay on as long. So if you wanted to go and do something like that, if you get your lash extensions done, you could request from your specialist to be able to use one that is supposed to be like for more sensitive skin or less toxic, but they'll typically tell you it's probably not going to stay on as long. So you just have to be okay with that. Otherwise, I would end up saying, going and doing a lot of the different drainage and binders before and after, if that's something that is like a non-negotiable for you, could end up being a smarter move, or like a lower tox mascara if that's something that you want to do. Alternatives to what else do you feel like would be like a good runner up, Dorothy?
A couple questions here about hair color.
Okay. So that will end up being in a future guide. There's like different, like more like boxed brands. If you're ending up going to a salon like a Veda, I have found to be, they're not like totally no tox, but they are lower than a lot of ones that are out there. And then there are other lines like that, but Aveda is a little bit more well-known and probably more countrywide than a lot of the other brands. But again, keep an eye out, guys. If you stay in touch and follow on Instagram, like when I have this ready, I will be announcing it. So follow over there, and this will be something that will be available for free for you guys to be able to access. I just have to wrap up working on that.
Yeah.
It is a whole together.
Please follow her on Instagram. She posts amazing educational content every single time. It's incredible, honestly.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You know what? This question hasn't been asked, but I think it's important. How do people know when they are being gaslit by somebody? Like they're asking questions, right? They're going for a procedure or they're going for whatever. How do they know that they're getting the truth? What questions do they need to ask?
It's a great question because it depends on what you're trying to get clarity on. Like if someone's like, hey, if they're asking about Botox or filler versus if they're trying to figure out if they end up needing their tooth removed versus like an implant versus a root canal, like it's just, that's very, very broad as far as like what would be like.
Right. I mean, I'm just thinking more beauty stuff. Like they go to a hair care place and they're like, oh, this is different. This is safe. Is it?
You got to do your research to know what that means. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I found that even with Aveda, where I thought it was completely like no tox. And as I started to go down this rabbit hole several years ago, I was like, there's still some of these Scrabble words towards the end of the ingredient list that are known to cause cancer. Like, why is this still on here? And I managed an Aveda salon. So like I was going through like all the products and they were like, no, that's just like, a lot of these are like plant names. I was like, this is a chemical name. And now people could put something in ChatGPT and say, what risks come along with being exposed to this thing? So it's a lot easier when you end up having that available, but that's why it is important, whether it's myself or other people that you've grown to know and like and trust, having your go-to resources that you go to be able to bounce these things off of is one of your best bets outside of doing the research on your own. But ChatGPT can be a great tool, but it's not the end all be all.
Right. So please comment on peptides in general. They are sold as not for human use, but many are attempting to do injections on their own.
Yeah, I mean, I use peptides. I don't want to go too far down here, but I know I referenced it in here. So when it comes to peptide usage, you're essentially being able to affect the way that your body is, either expressing certain genes or being able to upregulate the activity of a specific pathway. There's a lot of different mechanisms that happen with those. I would say if someone is not working on the other lifestyle components, the mitigation, the drainage, the binding, and all those other things, like I'm not just going to peptide someone's way out of illness. It definitely can be helpful, but I use it in conjunction with something else. And I think sometimes people are defaulting to like, oh, I'm just going to use a GLP-1 or I'm just going to use BPC 157 to fix my gut issues. And it doesn't work like that. So it would just be a tool. But yeah, all of them are going to say that it's a liability thing. They're just going to say it's for animal use. So that's just where we are with until the FDA would take it over and be like, oh, we're going to make money from all of these peptides. They're not going to say that it's for your use, but if you work with someone who knows how to use them, they can be a great tool.
Yeah, for sure. Brenda's wondering, do hair relaxer toxins dissipate after discontinuing? She discontinued them 20 years ago. Or are they still in her tissue?
There can be legacy exposures. So it can depend on the particular toxicant, how long the half-life is in the system. So, ultimately, and then I think of, it's just how rapidly like they bind to DNA. And so a lot of those, it's like the immediate response. So there may be some reparation that needs to be done because the damage is done and nothing kind of came in to fix that. So sometimes it's more about, maybe the toxicant isn't necessarily like as active as it was before, but the damage happened so immediately that we need to go back and address that. So you would have to look up a particular toxicant and even say like, what is the half-life of formaldehyde? What is the half-life of whatever? So it would depend on which thing we're talking about.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
So Carrie's asking Botox alternatives, please.
Yes. So when you are looking at, and I have my presentation pulled up here on the side, I would refer to that list. So I would say that outside of me putting together the list of the different types of treatments that I think can be super, super helpful. And again, are these going to replace you paralyzing your face? They're not. So I'm not even going to say, and even a lot of these products out there, they're like, it's Botox in a bottle. And I'm like, sure, but like it's also not. And you don't want women to have that expectation and think, oh, my skin's just broken. But people think that that's the only solution that they have to be able to improve upon that. So when you're going and looking at any of the microneedling that's out there and then going and putting on topicals, that is really helpful when you get into a good groove of good quality products. And again, I'm going to put all of these in the guide of the ones that I've been playing around with and using and liking the most. But face taping is insanely helpful. You just have to be really consistent with it. And you have to, I don't have a course on that. I could always point someone in the direction of a couple different people that I like that I think are really good with that, but you have to know how to use it. It's not just like a frowny. If you guys have heard about those where you're just like putting the stickers all over your face and it's like paralyzing, it's literally stretching out the muscle and it affects drainage in your face. And it's literally reshaping that muscle. It's different than just not moving and training your face not to move. You actually are strengthening and lengthening the muscle there. So those are the top strategies as of right now that I think have the most impact and are also affordable for people versus some of these treatments. People just can't swing them. They're just insanely expensive or they're not accessible in their area.
Yeah. And so what do you think of microneedling then?
Oh, I think it's a great tool.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think you could look at brands like Dr. Penn is a good one. We should probably reach out to them and try and get some type of like discount code for you guys too. But yeah, their products are great. They have great guides. They have a lot of different tools and resources. They have, great different protocols that you could go and follow. So, or you could go to a dermatologist or esthetician, and request that maybe they do their first round or two on you. And then you kind of get comfortable with like what it feels like. And then maybe you do it at home. But yeah, I think that would be a great investment.
Is there a specific brand for the face tape? People are asking.
The Natural Faces. I've tried several different brands, but The Natural Faces is the one that I currently use. She is the Natural Face Bible on Instagram. I think it's like a Japanese face tape. There's different strengths that are out there. I think she only has one. But again, if you guys just message me on Instagram, I can send you links to the different ones that I've used. I just don't have all of that together. It will be in my guide when it's ready to come out, but you could always message us and just ask for a reminder.
Right, for sure. One last
Yeah.
question. Barb is asking, how about the Face Master electrocurrent to the face?
I think that can be helpful. I think red light to the face could be helpful. I mean, there's a lot of tools. I think it can also come down to like there's things that could work with my friends that don't work with me because there was like cellular membrane repair that had to happen for me that didn't have to happen for them. Or there were gut issues that I had to repair so that my fatty acid absorption was higher versus somebody else. Or if you're in perimenopause and your estrogen is like tanking, probably no amount of topicals is really going to help until you make sure that your estrogen is at a spot where it's supposed to. And you can do that naturally or with HRT supplementation. So these are all the things that we consider when we're talking with clients. So that's why I want to be very careful to be like, oh, it's just a topical or, oh, it's just a microneedle. It typically is a combination. I know it's a pain in the butt because we want convenience and we want just one thing. But this is one of the things that like, if you want this to improve, it is probably going to take more effort than some of the other areas of life.
No, I appreciate you being real about that because, yeah, I don't think it's going to be one thing either.
Yeah.
So,
It's very tailored to each individual. So
absolutely. Well, Allyssa, thank you so much. That was incredible. That was a lot of information. I think everyone's got a lot of avenues that they need to look at now. They're thinking about the products they're using and looking for some alternatives. And she gave you guys a great list that you guys can go to. I use Yucca and the EWG, right? That one? Yeah, I use those two the most.
Yeah.
So,
and none of them are perfect, but it's better than nothing
it's
for
helpful.
sure. So yeah. But looking forward to putting all this conveniently in like one master guide or arena for you guys. So just make sure to stay tuned in and we're really aiming to simplify this for you. So don't worry, it's coming.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for this presentation today, and we'll definitely have you back on. And thank you all for coming today, and we will see you on the next Detox Live. Bye for now, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.